Have you ever had this happen? Someone tells you they want to watch a Christian movie and you cringe. Or a friend tells you they want to show you Christian art and you start thinking, I might be a little busy tonight. Or maybe someone says they want to show you some great Christian music and your first thought is to doubt the music will be good. Well, for centuries, Christians were making the best music, writing the best stories, and painting the masterpieces. So what happened? What has happened to us is that we immediately question the quality and craft of art made by a Christian. Why can we only point to C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien, and a few other artists in the last 100 years to claim Christians can make great art? That's what I want to unpack today. So join me as we examine the problem of bad art that bears the name Christian art and what we can do about it. Welcome, I'm Joel Prelsu, President of Arts Entertainment Ministries, where we mentor artists and creative professionals to succeed creatively and grow spiritually. And if God has called you into a creative career, you need to know you are not alone. We have videos and blogs and online courses created just for you, and you can find them by using the links down below. You may ask, why do we do this? We do this to encourage and equip you so you have confidence working as a Christian in the art world, media, or entertainment industry. Whether you live in a small market, you work remotely somewhere around the world, or if you live and work in a major market like here in LA, New York, London, or so on. Now, before we jump in, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Ask one favor, you know what to do. Take a second, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, even ring the bell so you're notified when we have new videos coming out. That will help other people find this content. It really does make a difference. So let's talk about why Christian art is so bad. Why do we have this problem? It's getting better, but why do we have this problem? Well, the first problem is what I call sanitized art. Sanitized art is art with no hint of violence, anger, sex, abuse, anything else that might cause the audience any level of discomfort. This fits the artwork of the late Thomas Kinkade, who said that he was painting a world without the fall. Now, there's nothing wrong with that per se, but we're not talking about the real world, real life, where we live in a broken world that needs a savior. And art can serve many purposes. It can be encouraging, uplifting, and inspiring, but it should also be thought-provoking at times, even discomforting and disturbing. And all these purposes can be godly and mirror the impact of the stories in the Bible. Consider the story of Samson, right? Killing men with the jawbone of a donkey and lighting the tails of foxes on fire to destroy entire fields. Then consider the end of his life in Judges chapter 16, where we read, "Then the Philistines seized him, gouged out his eyes, and took him down to Gaza, binding him with bronze shackles. They set him to grinding grain in the prison." That is graphic. That's not your typical children's story. That's not sanitized and whitewashed. The Bible tells it like it is. We should be doing the same thing. These are not Thomas Kinkade paintings. I have not seen a Thomas Kinkade painting of Samson with his eyes gouged out. If it's there, hit me in the comments, let me know. These are graphic and challenging. They're challenging to us because they help us recognize the full weight of sin and shame in the world. Life is not sanitized for your safety. There isn't anyone standing around with Purell to pour on your fingers, rubber gloves for your entire hands, and blinders for your eyes so you never encounter the raw truth of life living in a broken world. On the contrary, Jesus wants us to be aware of all the brokenness of the world, from Cain and Abel all the way till the end of the book of Revelation, when he brings justice. You see, sanitized art is fine for little children, but sooner or later we need to grow up. As the Apostle Paul put it, when I was a child, I talked like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. But when I became a man, the ways of childhood I put behind me. 1 Corinthians 13:11. Sanitized art is not what we need. But there is another problem we need to talk about. The second problem is the pursuit of sentimental art. Sentimental art is art intended to give you kind of a warm feeling, make you feel a little fuzzy inside. And at the heart of this expectation is a view of art as primarily therapeutic. See, the problem is evident when people see art as escapism from the world or as a therapeutic and emotional kind of salve to their wounds. And you may think of precious moments and paintings that evoke feelings of hope or peace, this kind of idyllic stuff. But before you say, well, that isn't my problem, consider our culture. For example, here in the West, where I live, I do know this. Our cultural mindset about films, TV, video games, and other art is often seeking escape from the daily struggles. I had a hard day. I want to grab a glass of wine and watch a movie, or play video games, or whatever it is. And so we go to a movie to distract ourselves from our daily frustrations, or watch a romantic movie to feel good about the world and our hope of being loved. Now, to be clear, there is a place for art that comforts and leads us toward peace, and it can be profoundly helpful, like artwork in hospitals and counseling centers. Research has shown recently powerful impact of artwork upon people for helping and healing. But this is not the core purpose of art any more than the core purpose of all food is to just feel good and be sweet, right? We don't just want what tastes sweet. There's a whole spectrum of tastes and flavors God has given us to explore and communicate. So our food diet, think about this. It consists of sweet, sour, salty, spicy, and so on. Our media and our diet should also reflect the same variety. Comedies, tragedies, romance, documentaries, adventure stories, and so on. The problem is that sentimentality isn't a biblical pursuit, and it isn't the point of art. Just as the goal of our lives isn't to have good feelings, the goal is to live godly lives. That means God's going to put things in our lives that help us become humble, that help us become godly, where we love God and love our neighbor more because of what we're going through in life. That doesn't sound like good feelings are going to be the primary driver. A lot of times we have an obstacle that forces us to have patience. Something forces us to become humble, and those aren't awfully good feelings. Although in the end, as we become more Christ-like, of course, we will feel that sense of peace and hope and dependency upon God. Now, this may happen in an array of ways, whether that entails singing on mountaintops or sitting in the slums with orphans. We live in a broken world, aching for hope and for a Redeemer. It is not good creating art that doesn't echo some part of this reality, which is the very point. And here's something to think about. Though Christian audiences may overlook flat, simple characters, the world will not. The broader culture watches these sanitized, simplistic characters and concludes Christianity doesn't relate to the injustices I've seen, to the abuse I've endured, and to the cynicism I see around me. You're not describing anything that fits the world I live in. So the problem of creating sanitized and sentimental art is that it results in very simplistic art that doesn't resonate because it doesn't really reflect reality. So let's talk about simplistic art. And I want to break it down into two main components: simplistic characters and simplistic stories. Simplistic characters. Characters in these scenarios are either really clearly good or clearly evil, or they're sinful and they're about to get saved and redeemed. And if you have a story with only those three kinds of characters, you haven't done very much character development. Why is this a problem? This isn't what we experience in real life. Again, even when we read scripture, King David was a king, and yet he ran for his life, pretended to be a madman among the Philistines, later committed murder and adultery and broke almost all the 10 Commandments in 1 year before finally repenting. And yet this is the only man of which the Bible says he was a man after God's own heart. Now that's complex and nuanced and challenging to wrap our mind around. David was a poet and a king, a musician and a warrior, passionate for God and yet deeply sinful. Now, we've been afraid as a Christian community to really get in the grit about someone's life unless it's a true story. Like the movie Amazing Grace, produced by our late friend Ken Wales and others, was about John Newton, who started as a captain of slave ships. But God transformed his heart so he became an abolitionist, fighting against the very people that he was making money alongside of. And eventually, he wrote the hymn we now know as Amazing Grace. See, as long as it's a true story, we can show the grit because we know it's authentic. Recently I was surprised by the movie I Can Only Imagine, because it actually showed the abuse and severe dysfunction of Bart Millard's life as a child. At one point, it was quite shocking. His dad, played by Dennis Quaid, spoiler, sorry, you should have seen it by now, he smashes a plate over Bart's back. And the grit of that scene naturally makes the forgiveness and restoration later on all that more powerful. Eventually, Bart wrote the hit song I Can Only Imagine, which became the most played song in history of Christian radio, as well as the best-selling Christian song of all time. It's become a certified quadruple platinum, which is just amazing. But what works in that movie is they didn't shy away from the difficulties in his childhood, the grit, and just pretend everything's fine or make simple characters. They're very complex characters. Now, the need for complex characters is true for all artists because real people are complex. We know this from our own lives as well as when we read the Bible. From King David to Queen Esther, to your Aunt Maria and your neighbor who drives you crazy. No one is completely evil. No one is completely good. We all have our struggles. And to be fair, it doesn't matter if you're Christian or not. Most writers have this problem when they first start writing. And when they get feedback from editors, it takes years to develop a robust sense of characters that feel like real people with real struggles. See, simplistic characters feel flat and don't resonate with the audience, whether they're in a novel, a film, or a video game. But simplistic characters aren't the only issue. The second problem is simplistic stories. As the band Blues Travelers sang in their song Runaround, it's like a bad play where the heroes are right and nobody thinks or expects too much. Then he makes cynical crack at Hollywood. He says, and Hollywood's calling for the movie rights, singing, hey babe, let's keep in touch. Hey babe, let's keep in touch. There's a lot of cynicism in his music based from his experience in the industry. Now, obviously, he's poking fun at Hollywood itself. There are many people here in Hollywood who are not really interested in great art. They can get hyper-focused on the money, call it a money grab, or lose sight of the craft. That's why we see these sequels that are just dreadful or the same old rehashed story. Hollywood makes its own mistakes. They're not perfect by any means. Rather than creating art that challenges us to think or invites us to be honest about the brokenness of life, so much art that Hollywood puts out is mere entertainment without much redeeming value. See, in the Christian films, we have our own problem. We often end up with simplistic stories that are about redemption, but they have simplistic lessons. So they don't have the same kind of grit. They don't grab you with the same force. And they have simple lessons like how to be kind, how to be wise or patient, etc. How to develop the fruit of the Spirit and to be Christ-like. And those are great things. But if the only purpose of art was to teach, we could excuse this obsession to make art with a clear moral lesson. But art is a gift that enables us to do so much more than just teach. We can teach in the classroom. Art is meant to bring out nuance and depth and push you to think differently and challenge you, help you to see the truth in a new way. If your artwork is all about teaching, that it's propaganda, it's not art. Don't confuse the two. There's a place for it, that's fine. We do need to teach and use our talents to teach people well. But if you're creating art, then the message, being concise and clear, is not the primary point. You making a documentary? Yeah, you should have that. But if you're making great artwork, there should be nuance that invites people in to think more deeply about life. Now consider how our ability to make art and our desire to create is part of the Imago Dei, or image of God, placed within us. And our model for our creativity is creation itself, the entire universe. And whether it is the peaceful pastures or terrifying storms, whether it's the wonder of the stars or fierce power of lions, so much room for nuance. Psalm 19 tells us this. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge. They have no speech. They have no words. No sound is heard from them. Yet their voice goes out into all the earth. Their words to the ends of the world. In the heavens God has pitched a tent for the sun. Apparently, all of creation is pointing us to God, without being explicit, without a concise moral lesson, without feeling the need to be simplistic. The heavens are mysterious, and they've provided a profound sense of awe for all of history, and somehow they speak of God. Our artwork can mirror this idea, leading others to a sense of mystery about creation and the Creator. It can be tempting for some creatives to make everything religious, but that often leads us back down the road of sanitized and sentimental art. God is the God of everything, not just what happens in a religious service or on Sundays. We're free to depict all of life. See, the Bible is full of complex stories of God choosing the most surprising people for the most surprising purposes to bring about his plan through the most surprising methods. What do I mean? Just consider Moses, a man convicted of murder who doesn't speak well, called by God to speak to Pharaoh, most powerful ruler in the world, and lead an entire nation on an exodus. And then God calls Joshua not to fight, but to walk around the city of Jericho over and over and to blow some trumpets. Talk about surprising methods. The God of the Bible didn't give us simplistic stories or simplistic, predictable characters. His plans and his works are mighty, mysterious, and awe-inspiring. Our God is anything but boring, anything but simplistic. So our art should never be simplistic. If you're an artist and you're a Christian, don't give up. Things are changing and there's a lot to be thankful about. I encourage you to check out some of our other videos like Stop Saying Christian Art. Help answer more questions about why even that term is probably not the best term. It's more confusing than helpful. And you can start to understand these issues even better. God is calling artists to make a difference, but we need to be not only innocent as doves, but also shrewd as serpents. So there are a few of the key reasons art that is called Christian art is often bad or isn't just what it should be. Now I want to ask you a favor. Can you share down below what are the reasons have you discovered of why some so-called Christian art isn't really what we need to be a witness in this culture? How have you seen people justify creating half-hearted art? As always, thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel, hit the bell, and check out the links down below to learn about our online courses. And don't forget to give me your comments about these issues of Christian art. How can we make better Christian art? What are the hang-ups and how can we overcome those? Look forward to reading your comments and continuing the dialogue. God bless.